Well, first of all, hello and good morning. Welcome to another Inte Breakfast, where we talk about e-learning, corporate learning, and everything related to that. My name is Sergey. I'm the co-founder of Intia. This is Raivis, who is the other co-founder and also a CEO of the company. And today we are going to be talking about
learning in the flow of work.
Yes.
Yeah. Not a completely new topic, I should say. It's been there around for some time, but we thought it's actually became a bit more topical right now.
Yes, I think it's becoming more topical. We'll talk about this specifically due to some changes in the technology, also due to organizations inevitably maturing to that level. You know what I found out yesterday? And there is one mistake in this slide right now. It has to be learning in the flow of work, R, as in registered trademark. It's actually registered by Josh Person.
Okay.
He uses this as a trademark, and
Okay.
I was going to give them credit anyhow. So Josh Person, for those who don't know, is one of the most well-known e-learning consultants. He founded his consultancy I think 30 years ago. It was part of the Deloitte group for some time, and he's like the staple of e-learning community. And a lot of things, terms are coined by him. This is one of them.
Absolutely.
And so that's Josh Person. Applause.
Yeah. Thank you, Josh, for being with us for all these 15 years.
Yeah. Thanks for joining our call.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a chart from, I think, the original article from 2018 on learning in the flow of work. We will not go through that chart in any significant detail. It's just that the idea is that learning in the flow of work is the next step of evolution of corporate learning practices, right? So it started from e-learning when it started out in the late 1990s, when the internet became ubiquitous, where computer-based training, based on CD-ROMs, something that we've never dealt with. Oh, I actually dealt with.
No, I've
dealt with this in university. I remember, I had lectures on financial economics or something, like a whole stack of CDs that I had to burn and watch through. But this is where it started. Then we moved from e-learning sort of as a copy of training practices that's been around forever to talent management, meaning that we look at the bigger picture in terms of how training is preparing
growing leaders.
Creating those leader reserves, as they call, right? And so on. Then it became continuous learning. Part of continuous learning is also lifelong learning. When you need to retrain, instead of just moving a person through their career from 20 to 65, you need to retrain them constantly. And there are people who acquire new job skills at 60 and 70 and so on. And then there's digital learning, meaning that as our life became digital, right? Everyone has a phone, everyone has an online persona, everyone has social networks, and so on. There's I highly recommend. It's easy to find this. Just look for this topic online. Go to Josh Person website. It's an interesting journey. We can probably talk about this in more detail some other time. But I think the biggest driver for learning in the flow of work is that training everyone for everything. What was that movie called? Everything, Everywhere, All at Once?
Yeah.
Something like
that, yeah.
So training everyone for everything is impossible, right? The amount of things we need to be prepared for is ever growing. The amount of time we can spend on training is
limited, to say the least.
And I would say shrinking as well.
Yeah.
And we need to prioritize. And one of the things that we hear and see all the time, and where we use this learning in the flow approach, is trying to not train people for rare cases, right?
Yeah.
So let's say, give me a job.
I don't know. Let's say you are driving a truck.
Okay, I'm driving a truck.
Yeah.
And I need to be trained for what to do when I'm stopped by the police, for example, right? There's a certain procedure for that. But, in some rare cases, in most cases, police will check my documents. In some rare cases, they will want to detain me, check my cargo, and so on. Like, do I need to be trained for that? I'm not sure. Like, do I need to go through the course? No. All I need to have is a mobile phone number for someone responsible that I can escalate to and just be done with it, right?
Yeah.
In a bank, you deal with customers which are typically typical customers, and sometimes those customers will have a weird passport. Like, does everyone need to be trained? No, probably not. You can escalate it to the manager and say, hey, this guy has a passport of this small island, it's not on the list, I don't know what to do, I shouldn't know what to do, deal with him, right?
Yeah.
Something like that, and so on and so on. I remember, so there was this case with actually a bank. They came to us and said, hey, we have a call center. The call center has about 65,000 people in it, working remotely mostly. And what they do, they essentially cold call or warm call potential clients and say, hey, would you like to apply for a card? If they say, yeah, sure, why not? You need to fill out a questionnaire. The questionnaire is about 40 items, 40 fields, starting with your name and surname and home address, and then they go into your employment details, into income sources, into your relatives, and they think into basic properties as well. If you own a flat or if you own a car, and if that car is leased or actually owned by you, and so on. So for 40 fields of this questionnaire, they brought us about 110 slide deck where every field was scrutinized, and it was explained that, did you know that some people will
not have a surname,
have a surname, or rather their name, something that they use as their name is actually their surname, and vice versa, because they are citizens of the European Union, but they are Korean by descent, and if they are residents, not citizens, then in their Korean passport it's vice versa. So for the purposes of, and so on and so on and so on.
Yeah.
In some other cases, when you're taking down someone's home address, it turns out, like in Latvia, for example, here in Latvia, not every house has a number. Sometimes a house has a name.
Yes.
Right. So it can be name of the house. So they will not have a number. In some other cases, some things were not like really super edge cases, just that if you ask someone, do you have a car? They'll say yes. You have to ask, is it leased or do you own it? And if they say, I don't know, you have to help them, find out quickly how to do that. Hey, look into your car documents. If it says a bank name in there, then probably you're not the owner. Bad news.
So a lot of nitty-gritty details.
A lot of nitty-gritty details. So they said we need to train, with 65,000 people on this part-time job as call center operators. We're hiring about 4,000 or 5,000 people a month. There's a huge turnover. People try this job, they quit and so on. There's a lot of training going on for new hires. And what do? We need to train them how to fill out this questionnaire. We've been doing this as a sort of a webinar, on doing this on calls with them. We need to do an e-learning course. And we said no. We said no because, training someone for 110 slides of this information would probably be like a 4-hour course. With exercises, with us creating all those edge case examples where you have to find out. So it's not just, learning about this, it's also learning to react to that and so on. And then once you go on the job, your chance of meeting a Latvian or a Korean or a person who doesn't know whether his car is leased or not is what, 1 in a year maybe, if you're working full time. With cars maybe twice a year. With Latvians maybe once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
If you don't work
if
here.
you're lucky.
Yes, we're a small nation. So the idea is that we said no, and but we didn't just abandon them. So we talked to them and we provided them kind of with 2 ideas. One was to take a lot of this information and move it into the questionnaire itself, right? So everything that can be automatically checked and cross-checked within the questionnaire should be done programmatically. Anything else is moved to the questionnaire with little help sign, where you can click on that help sign if you encounter some sort of trouble, or if the questionnaire detects that something is out of order, like you didn't fill in something, or something is shorter or longer than it should be, and so on. And it highlights the field and gives you a little bit of information. And be careful about this and that, double check this, and escalate if there is a problem. So instead of building a course that people would go through and then have to deal with something out of that course in months or years from now, of course they would forget. Of course they would forget. They, not even us, it's something we can't claim. The bank themselves created this interactive part of that questionnaire, which helps people as they fill out the questionnaire. And I think this is an excellent example of learning in the flow of work. So, we wanted to start with the definition, but instead we sort of started with the example.
With the case,
But we'll go a little bit more theoretical in a sec. So, training for rare cases is pointless. We'll see what you can do if you see those rare cases, but building courses is not something. You need to move that information into the flow of work. Otherwise, it will not help anyone. In fact, I would go as far and just say that training for anything ahead of time is pointless, more or less. People do forget stuff, and why would we want to spend time training? Then let people forget, and then hope that they remember or they find a way and they perform when the situation arises. So unless it's something that they do day in, day out, and which is like the core of their job, probably you can look at learning.
And let's be honest, even if in a lot of cases you are doing something every day, still the pace of change, I don't need to explain it. It is so fast that even those things that I need to know every day, they change every day. So it's basically impossible. If I'm selling a product, there will be a new release, there will be an update, an upgrade, a facelift or something.
If
Our software will be changing faster than we can train for it. We see that every day.
I'll talk about software solutions specifically a bit later, but that's probably one of the biggest pain points. I think we just stopped doing any kind of software training in Intel like a long time ago, because anytime someone comes to us and say, hey, we need to build this training for the system we use at work, like we fill it out every day and everyone needs to go through a screencast, get some exercises like what would you do if this or that happened, where do you click, and so on. And then even if it takes you like a couple of weeks to build this, there will be a new release on the horizon and you'll need to rebuild this.
I would say there are two cases where we still do that. One case is we still have to explain the general principles of the system. Because if people have never ever used a CRM in the company, they need to understand how it works, the building blocks of it. Another use case we see sometimes it's required by somebody that people are trained ahead of time before they can use a system. It's a very kind of German case, I would say. Very often the work council will not allow a system to be launched for employees unless they're trained. And it's impossible to explain to those people that, the world doesn't work like it used to be in 1965.
A regulator requires you to train everyone, so you do that once in the very beginning, and then you assume that everyone is trained. The system mutates in a good way over a couple of years into something unrecognizable, because if it's a new system, it's just been launched, it's definitely going to change and update. And no one is essentially trained for that. But the biggest problem is that people will probably still be consuming that old training, maybe with a lot of patches, like, post-its on it saying that, this doesn't work like that anyway, please ignore this part. And, here's a link to this actual manual that you need to look at if you want to really understand anything.
But you can be clever about it. Even if you are constrained by these things, then be clever about it. Think of that minimum viable thing that ticks the boxes and does some good for the people.
I'd say minimum changing thing, right?
Yeah,
So
the
not
core.
not MVP, minimum
Yeah.
viable product, but minimal changeable product.
Yeah.
Things that will probably not change.
I mean, our CRM will still be registering customers, deals, leads, and so on. It will not
Yeah.
be registering our products,
Yeah.
you know, and vice versa. So
And I also think it's the approach to people. Years ago we needed to train people to click the red button in the top left corner.
to close the window?
No, not necessarily to close the window. We still have this stupid slide everywhere in every course, which is like right after the cover, which says click X to close the window, click next to go to the next page and stuff. So we still do that a little bit. But the idea is that we used to train people how to use interfaces specifically, right? And people would remember those things specifically, right? There were 3 buttons. I needed to click the rightmost button. And if you train people that, hey, there will be a dialogue which will offer you, an option to delete this customer, then don't use it unless the customer has signed this paper. Otherwise, click suspend or something like that.
Yeah.
If they know that, in any dialogue, even if it moves or changes or more options come aboard and so on, they will be able to find it. Right. So another part we wanted to mention with the training of flow of work is what happens when you don't have it. Right. So what to understand what part of the flow actually we want to fix. So what do people do if they encounter a problem in their work process? Like
sometimes they do nothing.
Yes, that's actually the first option.
Cool. Okay.
So
bingo.
Let's say we're talking about a baggage handler at the airport, right?
Yeah.
There are bags with green labels and yellow labels
and no labels.
and no labels, and you sort them, and then suddenly there is a blue labeled bag. And like, what do? Well, you do nothing. Like a lot of people will choose to do nothing. My job isn't about dealing with those things, so let's skip it. It rolls through to the end, rolls off this conveyor belt and is gone forever. Sorry if that was your bag, but the worst option is to actually do the wrong thing, right?
Yeah.
So some people will say that, we need to do something, blue is sort of like green label, definitely not yellow, definitely not a no label. It's sorted with those things. We'll just do the wrong thing, assume, out of the best intentions. If you're lucky, they will escalate this, right? Maybe they'll ask a colleague, they will stop, ask someone higher to help, but kind of what learning in the flow will offer them is hey, pause and learn what to do right here. You've never encountered this. Here's your chance to do that. And what we want to achieve is 2 things. First of all, we want to provide those systems to them, because obviously you don't want them to stop working, stop sorting. Go 4 floors up to a computer and
stop the whole kind of belt and everybody's waiting for their luggage now for hours.
Yeah, or if you're talking like a bank or a medical situation, you just stop working with the customer and you say, hold on, there is a course. It's 120 minutes. I'll be with you in 2 hours. Put on the
if
headphones.
I pass it.
If I yes, exactly. If I pass it, there's like a manual approval to that. I'm writing a little essay, so probably 3-4 working days will be right with you. So you want this learning to be like fast, right there, available, and very, very targeted to the situation at hand. And ideally, if you have all areas of your work covered, you will not be knowing if you are actually working or studying.
Yes.
The good, I'd say, litmus test for what's if that learning is happening in the flow of work is asking yourself, like, are you working or studying, right? So like if I approach you and you're at your computer, I can always ask you, like, are you working or being trained? And you can always say, I'm actually in training right now, which probably means that I can just pause it and like talk to you and what did you want, like, but
the answer has to be no, I'm working.
The answer has to be like, why would you even care? Right.
Okay.
So the answer is like
doesn't matter.
I don't know. Right. It's like I'm going to be editing this video like later today, and I know how to do that. But if I were using a new software, I would probably just start editing it in a new software, because probably I know the basics already. You drop the video file in it, and there is a little cutting tool that cuts it, and then I'll figure it out. If I can't figure it out, I'll Google it, and then I'll go back.
And hopefully the system will also suggest you tips and tricks or something. It will see that you are kind of doing it maybe in the wrong way.
Are you trying to edit the podcast? Would you like
us to... Is it a podcast or is it a reel?
Something like that.
Something like that.
So and when 4 hours later you ask me like what's going on, I'll say I'm still working on this video, and you'll be like, hey Sergey, you said it's going to be like half hour. And it's been 4, but I've learned a new software in the process. So that's the point. But what I wanted to show you, show everyone, of course, is
so how does that work?
A couple of tools that can help you build systems like that, or a couple of approaches that we've worked with in the past. So one is I chose 2 softwares. There are more softwares like that. One of them is called WalkMe. That's a unicorn company, like worth more than $1 billion, I think, huge company. That allows you to embed training into any web-based software. I think not web-based as well, but generally, if you have a system online, like an online CRM where people need to register customers, manage deals and so on, and this is something custom built for you. What you can do is you can use this software and walk through all the flows of customer registration, or finding new, like older customers, or registering deals, or anything that you need to do in that software. And just describe what you're doing. It will do a lot of description for you. It will record your narration if you want to. It will take all the screenshots, and it will create those trainings. But it will not be playing them as a separate training object. It will not be like, I've recorded the screencast, now you go through the screencast, get trained, and then go into the system. It actually becomes part of the system. So at any point in time, you can say, hey, I'm lost, or I've never been to this page, or something, and you can click help, and it shows you everything interactively. And it can run through softwares, let's say in a demo mode, when you actually click the real software and it tells you what is going on, what you need to click. Or it can test you and say, hey, now you need to register this customer, and if you don't do it properly, I will see that, and I will alert you, and I will tell you, hey, you're not doing this properly, and so on and so on. So of course, ideally we want all our software to have this functionality by default, but as a software developer, I know how hard it is to create and maintain, and it's rather resource intensive, and it's something that everyone does every time. So WalkMe kind of solves this problem for you. If you're developing any online software, you can have this interactive help system which can do guides, can test you, can do demo walkthroughs, and also can be available interactively when you're lost, or when changes appear, right? You introduce some new functionality. Everyone who logs in now sees the window which says, hey, there's something new. Spend a couple of minutes to do that, but only if they, for example, get to that functionality, not before, because otherwise, again, this will be useless. If you're not going to use this immediately, you will forget by the time the need comes. There's something called SAP Enable Now, which is the same thing for all SAP-based systems, because SAP-based systems, first of all, are all custom-made, and secondly, they're super complex typically. And there's probably like a dozen of other tools as well. I just chose those 2, and it's funny that they use almost exactly the same imagery. And
when I was looking at the slide earlier, it was what's the difference?
We started working with Fresenius actually in a software called Team Trainer. By Knowledge Force, and that is another example of a software which does that. And I think they started as a plugin for SAP because it's all German, but then they created a software which can do other training for other software, and then also other training. Period. Right. So this is how we started. So if you are struggling with training anyone on a software that's ever changing and so on, look into solutions which will embed this training into the software. You can use third parties. You don't need to talk to your IT department too much about that, and forget about creating screencasts which people watch for 2 hours, then entirely forget about this when they need, and when they stumble upon something, they go back and try to find the correct piece and so on. What I use YouTube for, and what I love YouTube for, is that even in longer things, it highlights you the exact parts. And when you look like, how do I delete a part of the file in this video editor? There is a video editor training, but it'll show you this little piece and so on. In LMSs, it's typically the case, not the case.
Not the case. Yeah.
It's way better to use one of those solutions. Another example from kind of entirely hardware part of things.
Yeah, let's go hardware.
Yeah, let's go hardware. And we've had a few cases like that. One was when we worked as a subcontractor on courses for I think it was Stora Enso. It's this huge Swedish sawmill company. They have dozens of huge sawmills. Sawmills are dangerous by nature. There's a lot of moving parts, very heavy.
Sawing everything.
There's
on their way.
There are saws, definitely. So you need to be trained in terms of safety before you do that. But the other part of their business is that they use a ton of really small vendors and subcontractors. So essentially, you can just walk into this facility to do whatever. Maybe you're doing a delivery, maybe you're doing a pickup, maybe you're working on something. And with a lot of moving people, it's very hard to catch those people and sit them down in a class, train them for safety, and then they will go to this facility maybe a couple of months later, and it's a huge problem because they have forgotten the safety. So if you're not interested in just putting the tick box, that they've been trained, you're actually interested in them not being
hurt or
sawed, or being added to your timber log, and so on. And then you want this to be more effective than that. The other part of that, if you want to be really strict and you don't want to let people go in, you have to make sure that they get trained. But if you're training them online, it might take them a couple of weeks to get to that, to get hired, to get on board, and so on. And again, you have a person who wants to work there, but they need to get to the training, especially if it includes some physical part. So the solution that they're using, and this is the picture of this learning kiosk, is not from Stora Enso, but what they have is similar in concept, is that you have a kiosk, a computer, which is right next to the entrance, and you have your badge, which lets you through the entrance. So this badge will not let you through the entrance unless you've been trained. If it happens, you go to that kiosk, you authenticate with that badge, with the kiosk. It says, "Hi, welcome, Raivis. You've not been trained for this specific facility," for example. Because it can be facility specific, it can be your job role specific, it can be anything else specific, because we know where you are and who you are. And it says, "Hey, go through this training. There's keyboard for you. There's screen. It's mostly iPads now and with touch screens, but then it either print out like a temporary badge for you if you're training a visitor to be safe in there, or if you're a permanent worker, it will be coded into your pass, and you will be let through that gate again. And maybe this thing will expire in 6 months." And you will have to go retrain again, and this is all automatic, and you don't need to email, because people who work at sawmills are not the kind of people who check their email, two
every
times. They check their emails every month. We had this problem with Rimi, a huge retail chain, where a lot of their workers don't have emails at all.
It's just too costly. I mean, those people, you don't want to create emails for people who will be using it once a year.
But they don't even have personal emails. That was the problem. Like my parents, for example, they are retired, but they have one email for both of them, right? And I'm not sure that my dad knows how to use that. My mom knows. Like it's more. Like,
she's paying the bills, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And she's like the CTO of that little family, and
Yeah, so
if my dad wanted to get in there, like in the Ascalon, what's your email? He would do that, but then he would forget to check it like forever. He doesn't have it enabled on his phone or anything. So it's in situations where you have to deal with a lot of traffic, a lot of like almost random people that you don't have a lot of control of, like subcontractors, for example. If you work in logistics or manufacturing like that, then this is one of the solutions for learning in the flow of work, right? And you can have this not just next to the entrance to the facility. You can have it next to specific equipment, for example, right?
Yeah.
So or you can have it built into the equipment. For example, if you have this coffee machine, if you've been to a gas station, these coffee machines are huge. They have huge screens. So essentially what it does, it trains you to clean it, because it gives you all the instructions. Previously when we worked with companies like Narvesen, for example, we had to deal with people being
create
trained
kind of interactive guides.
Yes.
But
now this guide is built into the machine, and if your machine does not do that, like just think about it. So
maybe you need a different one.
Maybe you need a different one. Exactly. So another thing, I think this for now this is the final example, is from a course that we never built actually, and it's the one that got away, and I was referring to this almost like every time we talked in the flow of work. So the story is this: there is a company, a bank, which has a chain of branches, and in those branches they do currency exchange. So you can come there with your, we're in Euro area.
Now,
so
it was in the days when we had many different currencies
it
in
started
Eastern
more than
Europe.
10 years ago. Yes. So we had a lot of different currencies, plus dollars, plus all the currencies from the East, plus it was so granular that for dollars of different years, they had different exchange rates. There was an extra fee for super old bills and so on. So they had to do a lot of training for people, and of course you cannot just sit someone down and ask them to study this for 8 hours, and then when they meet a Korean won
once in
their lifetime, they remember exactly all the security features of that note, and then we'll exchange. So instead they had this huge like guidebook where everything was listed and updated. The problem with the guidebook in those times was that it was actually a file on a shared network drive, shared across the whole country, and it needed to be updated regularly, because those fees for they were also in there, and they were changing not the actual currency exchange rates, but the fines for torn or too old bills or something like that. They
and then some bills in some countries get taken out of circulation very regularly. I mean, if you have 200 countries and at least 100 of them have currencies that you might encounter, at least once a week, some of the bills will not be accepted anymore because they're So it's a lot. It's a lot of work. It's just a lot of work to just update the guide on daily basis.
I think they had full-time staff to do that. But the thing was that, again, it was pre-2014.
Yeah.
The thing was that since the internet was slow and this thing with pictures was huge, people just downloaded it locally.
Or printed out.
I don't think they printed it out, with colors and everything,
case,
but they mostly downloaded it.
Yeah.
And when you updated something on the network drive, there was no guarantee that people would notice and would update. You have to push this. It was a nightmare. So they wanted e-learning. So instead, what we offered them is, hey, let's build an interactive catalog of those things that you can update in the background, and everyone will just go online and use it every time very easily. It will be like, hey. Do you see this bill? Yes. Can you tell the country? Yes, it's Japan. What does it say? It says 100,000 yen.
Okay.
Click 100,000. And
what's the year?
And then I'll show you the examples already, because there is not so much variation. You can click like, it looks like this one. And I'll tell you, hey, you need to check this, and that for security. It also is in the red category in terms of you need to apply this 2% fee for exchange on top of everything, because it's old, and anything else that you need to know. So it was like 2 clicks, like 3 clicks maybe. What's the country? What's the amount? what's the specific variation, and that if any.
Yeah.
And we proposed to build that. It never went anywhere because they were going through a big change at that time.
Yeah.
And that bank got bankrupted, sold, bought, and rebuilt from scratch again with a new e-learning system, and probably ditching the system as well. I don't know.
In the process,
I think the problem of currency exchange has become way smaller since, because we're in Eurozone. But I was using this example, since like 2014, and at one point I just realized that it's obsolete, because what I would do today, I would just take my phone, take a picture of this bill, and it will tell me absolutely everything I need to know about that. And it will show me interactively on that bill what I need to look out for, or what's the procedure for maybe looking in the ultraviolet light, and so on and so on. And I don't need any training, and that is not even learning in the flow of work. That's more about job performance at this point, right?
It becomes a tool.
We migrate from learning into the learning in the flow to work tools that are built by L&D essentially. And actually, I went online yesterday to see, to find those pictures. There's actually a ton of tools already available on the market for that. Of course, you can build your own, but the fact is that everyone has this device which is capable of doing that and more. So I think learning in the flow of work is being greatly amplified with the fact that everyone has a phone and a camera and a very smart device with them at all times. So that's another approach that I wanted to highlight, that if you need to train someone to deal with a thing, build an app for them. Don't train them, build an app for them. It will probably take care of most training, or you can use that app for training purposes as well, instead of just delivering a course of any information to them. That was another thing that I wanted to show. Okay, we're at 40 minutes, so let's run through a couple more things. Pros and cons, right?
Yes.
This is something we wanted to talk about.
Because it's, as always, I mean, I like Josh Burson. He always comes with those bold ideas that gonna change the world. But he's a visionary. He's a visionary.
Yeah,
he's a very great visionary.
The picture of the future.
But the future is usually more complicated than we imagine. So let's talk pros, but also cons, because
right. So
there are some limitations.
By now, I think it's pretty clear cut that. Learning in the flow of work boosts performance, right?
Absolutely.
Instead of stopping or doing something wrong or making a mistake, you can just learn really quickly.
And you don't invest time and money in this kind of proactive training.
So it's when your C-level people come to you as L&D managers and say, what are you doing to boost our productivity, to increase sales, to decrease safety, and so on, other than saying training, we're training everyone.
We'll train everybody more. And then the CEO says, okay, so who's going to pay for those hours they don't do their work?
Exactly. And so instead of having that conversation, you can rely on learning in flow of work for increasing their performance on the job. Another part is if you are struggling with incentivizing people to train, learning in flow is easier because you only learn things that you need right now, and you're very much incentivized to do that.
So our learners are not motivated to learn. Just it disappears. This idea disappears.
Because again, we've talked about this hundreds of times. I think you don't need to motivate people to learn. You need to motivate them to do their jobs, and then give them the tools to do their jobs. And if they are incentivized to do their jobs, they will also want to learn. If I'm motivated to finish this project, I need to know how the software works, I will go and teach myself. If I have no idea why I would need this software or when that would happen, I will not care even if you spoon feed me with micro learning about this and so on. So you kind of get off everyone's back with training and just say, hey, you're stuck, here's a little help, people learn. Then automatically it means not learning things that you don't need, so there's less learning, less cost to the work hours.
There's less training. Less learning, but also less training. We don't have to utilize
debatable. Let's go into
yeah,
the cons.
debate. Okay.
And faster time to market, right?
Yeah.
So if something changes, you can just rebuild this little part much faster than going through the whole course again.
Yeah.
If you don't have time to build the whole thing, you can just attack the critical parts of the work process and supply those manuals there and so on. The cons then, as we've learned in the COVID times, just-in-time approach is very fragile. If you don't keep any stock of, let's say, cars, and the supply chain breaks, you can't sell cars anymore because they are not coming. If you had more cars stockpiled, you would be able to continue to sell them until the supply chain resumed working, and now you can't do that. And that happened to a lot of things. Same thing will happen with learning. If something changes to like it's a fragmented picture of little learning pieces, and it needs to work perfectly. And if you're relying on the fact that anytime you encounter a problem, there will be something up to date and helpful, and there isn't, because there are just too many moving parts for you to keep track of, you will not have a fallback plan, right? So if you're trained in general for everything, then you probably know how to deal with it. If you rely on that, for example, you keep cleaning the coffee machine, and it keeps giving you those instructions, but at one point you find that the machine has changed, the instructions haven't changed, and now you're stuck. Because you have no idea what to do. You've just been relying on following this job performance support tool. So it's fragile, right? If you were trained once, maybe a long time ago, there's a better chance that you will be able to deal with it. But again, there's a plan B for that. Another part is physicality, right? It's very easy to do in the online environments.
Kind of
if your job description is sitting at a computer all day, you can't do that. If your job description is driving a truck, might be a little bit harder. If your job description is being a police officer or a security guard, it's like you can see that person who stole that thing running away from you. Would you like some help? You mentioned this. Remember this little clippy guy from Microsoft Office? It looks like you're chasing a criminal. Would you like some help with that?
Yeah.
So that might be a problem. Another part is that now that you've eliminated like this big learning part, you're investing everything in there. What you'll find is that you first of all you'll need a knowledge base, right? If you say that, hey, you're now in the cabin of this new train that we've just bought for our company, and there's a link to the manuals for those things. There's a link to manuals for those things. There's a link to that. If this button glows up, click here. You'll see the and so on. It might be that those things are, some of them are digital, some of them aren't. They rely on different servers. This part lives on our production servers. That part lives on our sales servers. This part lives in an internal database. This one lives at an external vendor website. It's a mess. So you need to have a proper knowledge base. Some place where everything is rather uniform, is easy to search, find,
and
tag
serves as a single source of truth as well.
Yes.
This is sometimes a problem when these single sources of truth are, again, which one is the last version?
Yes.
The one on my computer or on your computer?
Or the one on the vendor website or the one in the internal system.
Yeah. So that has to be eliminated.
Yes, but also we need to understand that just having a knowledge base is not the same as learning, right? So if we're doing learning in the flow of work, that part needs to be about learning, not about just, hey, here's a quick link to the correct page in the manual, which is already a great help, but still it can be about learning. Learning is about behavior change, learning is about principles, learning is about getting tested, learning is about transferring theoretical knowledge into practice and then following up to know if that worked, and this is how we learn, and so on and so on. So the last part is that when like again with this coffee machine, if you've always been doing this, okay, it tells me to move this part, okay, and then it tells me to insert that part. You will not gain the idea of how that works, and as soon as you encounter one of those
new cases,
hazards or
things
like
that
new
never
cases,
happened.
things that never happened, or things that changed suddenly. We were back to that fragile situation. So actually, the big picture is the fix to that fragility. Do you know what that picture is?
In what sense?
Do you want to guess why this picture is on here right now?
Because I don't know. Because kind of you can lose the big picture in all this mess and a lot of people.
It's actually simpler. It's a stupid joke. So it's a very big picture.
Okay.
So it's actually it's actually the largest picture in Louvre.
Ah, okay.
It's I think it's like 6 meters tall or something.
Okay.
So that's a very big picture. So I wanted to show it to you. Now, if we talk about big picture, so your approach is to identify those minimal changeable things, things that are fundamental to whatever you do, things that you need to know without going in depth, but that give you shelves on which you can stack those smaller things. And then you support it with a knowledge base, ideally kind of learning oriented. You support it with feedback systems, because you as a learning manager, you need to know if something isn't working. One of the biggest problems is getting that feedback. When you suddenly find out that people are like can't find something, but you have no idea that they are struggling. They will not tell you, you will not ask them, and things aren't working as expected, but you're happily oblivious to that. So you need to know that. Like, one of my favorite things is when people are looking for something in the LMS and they don't find it, those things need to be logged and sent to you as like a monthly report or something. Like, hey, you work in a bank, people have been searching for Bitcoin in the LMS. Why? Probably because clients are asking. Why? Probably because it's a thing. What do we need to do? Well, we need to react and train people on what Bitcoin is, or what our stance on Bitcoin is. Also, I feel such a cliche. I'm like on a podcast microphone talking about Bitcoin. Right. Another part is pop-up learning, right? So once you have the big picture, you can have that learning pop up everywhere. And we have so many systems to do that. From installing an iPad next to that machine that everyone needs to know about, to writing a flow of things that needs to be done if you suddenly see an alarm going off, to pretty much to pop-ups which pop up in your software that we started with when you need help. And one of the things that really helps us with that, and where a lot of this is going, is thanks to AI, which is aware of your contexts. That's actually a pretty cool thing, where that old Clippy was rather dumb. No one really liked it. Because he didn't know. He had very little idea of what I was doing in Microsoft.
He wasn't reading what you were writing. He was not able to, he wasn't able to read it. Let's say it's not like he was lazy or no. It wasn't possible those days.
What happens now? I go on Gmail or I go on LinkedIn. I start writing a message, and the system pops up and says, "Hey, it looks like you're writing an angry email. Would you like that email to be less angry? Let me teach you a few ways." In a few ways. Or this sounds like a sales call. Do you want like to have a copilot which helps you, right? Or you're formatting your resume like in I think it's in Microsoft Word now. If you open a CV, like a resume,
I haven't done that for 15 years.
It shows you a panel which is enabled by LinkedIn Learning, because it's just Microsoft bought them. And it tells you, hey, it looks like you're formatting your resume. Would you like to talk about, advancing your career, writing good resumes, and so on? And it can actually look at parts of what you're writing and suggest stuff. It's like crazy. And a lot of that through cameras, through augmented reality, which isn't sci-fi anymore, and it's really cheap and available, can be brought into physical world as well. So it's absolutely all possible.
But Let's talk about how can you make it happen, because it's
Right.
not easy.
Let's-
As you can guess,
Yeah, I
it's
think-
not just one click
Yeah.
or just buying a piece of software and you've done it.
Yes, that's essentially the last slide, I think, here.
Yeah.
And so to leave you, and it's been longer than usual, but to leave you with the idea of what to do once this call is over. First of all, to build good learning in the flow of work, you need to look at the flow of work. You need to understand how the work flows. You need to go down to those people that it's always a good idea, even if you're just training them. But here it's crucial. You need to understand their pains, what hurts, what they struggle with most often. You need to understand the bottlenecks, things they can't do and why they can't do that. Maybe you need to work
Or
around
things
those
that
things.
just take a lot of their time and effort to happen because
Yes.
they don't have that support right there.
Yes, you need to look at the resources they have. One of my go-to examples is a
Yes.
company which created e-learning for everyone and sent it out to everyone, only to find out that people in the branch offices do not have headphones to listen to that e-learning. And then it took them a couple of months. They bought like a few thousand of headsets. They sent the headsets to them. And then a few months later, they found out that they can't
Sit in headsets?
sit in headsets in front of clients, right, from 9 to 5. And
Yeah.
at 5, there is no obligation to learn, right? They go home.
Yeah.
And that was a failure. So you need to understand the resources in that sense. You need to understand the environment. For example, like if you're a salesperson, you cannot, and you're interacting with the live person, right? It's much harder to just stop and go through a little learning thing, as compared to you being a worksman and fixing something, like where you can just stop and do that. Or maybe you're working out in the street and the phone, you can't really see well what's what, and so on. Maybe think about that. And you also think about management in the sense of
You mean the line managers?
the line managers, the people who are there, because they can be your great assets and they can help you introduce the learning into the flow of work, or they can be a great hazard to that, and they can just say, hey, I don't need this. This is nuisance. We've been doing this different the whole time. It just works. And so
It works already.
But again, we've touched on this a lot of times.
Absolutely.
Speaking of things that we've touched upon a lot of times, we have a YouTube channel where you might be watching this right now. Do follow and subscribe to that channel. There's a ton of useful things, hopefully, in there as well. We have Instagram, where we post, I think, more like fun stuff about learning. We do physical conferences from time to time as well. So do make sure you follow us on LinkedIn to see that. There will be blog posts about what we talked in breakfast on LinkedIn as well. So we are trying to put out a lot of information to you through every channel. So feel free to follow us. We'd be very happy. With that, at 57 minutes, one of the longest breakfasts somehow.
Yeah, somehow,
We'll give you 3 minutes back, and you can go back to your flow of work and have a great rest of your Friday.
If you have an idea for any of the next breakfasts, just drop us a line again in any of the channels.
We're always happy. We're always happy to accommodate.
We want to talk about things that bother you, so let us know.